I love cooking and I love teaching people how to cook. I've been doing both for 30 years. To cook well, it helps if you love and value food, as that's where it all starts. My approach to cooking is simple and not new. Use the best ingredients you can get organized, and follow the recipe. And that way, you'll be sure to get really wonderful results.
Too often a salad is seen as a mere accompaniment, put together with less thought than the dish it is accompanying. In my opinion, one's approach to a salad sets the standard for any other task in the kitchen. Indeed, in some restaurant kitchens, a new recruit will be given a basket of greens to wash and dry as a first task to test to see how much they care about the food and the ingredients. If you make a really good simple leaf salad, it means you possess the patience, care and love of food to do almost any other task in the kitchen. And what making a salad calls for more than any other thing is care. And care, of course, makes for really lovely food. This mimosa salad is really lovely and light before the richer roast of pork with fennel seeds, which we're going to be having for our main course. A fairly simple combination of ingredients: eggs, olives, salad leaves, a nice balsamic vinaigrette, and then a few little light shavings of parmesan on top. So very light, got lots going on, but not rich or heavy in any way. The reason the word mimosa is used in the title is because when we have our hard-boiled eggs, so hard-boiled eggs which we've boiled for 10 minutes, boiling salted water, and then we're going to pass the yolk of the eggs through a sieve. And that creates this little mimosa effect. And mimosa, as you know, is the name of a tree. It's also a name used in America with a particular drink of champagne and citrus fruit juice. But the effect we get when we sieve the egg yolk is the same effect as the appearance of the mimosa flowers. And it's a little garnish, or an edible garnish, which I use over and over again. So separate the egg yolk from the egg white, and then just sieve the egg yolk. So I'm using a coarse sieve. If your sieve is too fine here, it'll drive you crazy. And in a way, the mimosa will come out too fine and it won't scatter in a lovely powder. An old-fashioned sieve, so it's slightly, holes in the sieve are slightly bigger. With the egg whites then, we chop them. Cut the egg white into little strips like that. Cut them crossways, so just a little gentle chop. I don't want it too fine either. Interestingly, if you chop the egg white too fine, it just isn't so nice to eat. At different times of the year, I'll replace the salad leaves in this particular recipe with other ingredients. I sometimes do this salad with asparagus, either boiled or grilled. The next thing I need to look at are our olives. And I'm using black Kalamata olives, and I always buy olives with the stones in, because once you take the stone out of an olive, the flavour disappears north and south. And then to stone the olive, just press on the olive with your knife, like that, and then just literally pop out the stone. So the slightly more tender black Kalamata olive stones so easily. And I'm going to chop these fairly finely. Next thing is our vinaigrette. And I'm making a balsamic oil vinaigrette. I'm using 2 tablespoons of the sort of bland, if you like, sunflower oil. This dressing will keep in the fridge well for a couple of days. Not endlessly because there's a little garlic in it, but 3 or 4 days, no problem. So the olive oil. So equal sunflower, equal olive, and then 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. If you don't have balsamic vinegar, it's really good in this because it goes really well with the eggs and the olives. Lemon juice will be perfect, or a good red wine or white wine vinegar. Some crushed garlic crushed to a paste, so that's quite strong, but the oil and vinegar are well able for it. So a pinch of salt and pepper. So whisk it to get the oil and the vinegar to mix, like that. That looks good. I'm going to taste it. I'll just taste it off the end of the spoon. See how I'm doing for salt? Perfect. Sometimes it takes a little extra salt. I've got lovely little selection of salad leaves. I've got this lovely little mustard, which I love. It's a very sort of fine little leaf like that. I've got some rocket leaves. I've got the spiky mizuna. I've got the long, thin, slender mibuna. And in the case of salad leaves, in an ideal world, as organic as is possible in your situation. So I'm going to dress the leaves, okay? So always, if you make your dressing ahead of time, or even only like I did a few moments ago, literally moments, always whisk it to disperse the oil and the vinegar evenly. Then
pour or spoon on less dressing than you think you need. You can always put more on. If you put too much on, the whole effect gets soggy. Sort of flutter the leaves down through and they just get glazed. Okay, and that's perfect. You can see there's a lovely little shine, but they don't look sodden because that would be no good at all. To assemble the salad, I like to do it sort of family style like this. I start off with the chopped olives and I make a sort of circle around the plate, a sort of a broken circle if you like, because even though it's a simple thing, it can still be a beautiful thing. Then the next ingredient to go on is going to be the egg white. That was the coarsely chopped egg white. I'm going to hide underneath the salad. Okay, I like that to be pretty much invisible. Then the salad, nice and light. Just pile it up. You don't have to make a Himalayan scene. If it falls over, that's not the end of the world. Then our mimosa, which we just sprinkle over it. And it could be just that, but I like to put a few tiny little shavings of Parmesan cheese. And think of the Parmesan here not as extra richness, but just as an extra little hit of flavour. And the sweet Parmesan, the salty, bullish, if you like, olives, and then the rich egg and the light leaves, and then the tickle of the balsamic, very nice. At this stage, it'll be easy to overdo the Parmesan, so don't make it into a cheese salad. So in total, if we've put an ounce of Parmesan on there, that's as much as we've put on. Straight to the table with that. Really light, refreshing, totally get the taste buds going. Delicious before lots of things, and particularly good before the pork.
A loin or belly of pork roasted on the bone with the rind transformed to a crispy, burnished, golden crackling is a lovely sight and makes a wonderful meal. In fact, all cuts of pork roast well, but only if the cut of meat has a good layer of fat on it before you start. By the time the meat is cooked, most of that fat will have rendered out, to be strained off, cooled and chilled for using another day. The added flavourings of fennel seeds, chilli and garlic work brilliantly with the sweet meat, and to accompany the pork, traditional applesauce pairs really well with the Southern European flavourings. If you want to have a beautiful roast of pork, you have to start off with a really lovely piece of meat. I've got a piece of loin of pork, which comes from the back of the animal, and it's got a really nice proportion of the fat on top to the lean. And if you want succulent, sweet-tasting meat with really good crackling, then you need to have the fat to start with. To score the meat, cut the rind at about 1 centimetre intervals and cutting about ½ centimetre into the flesh from the top of the piece down to the bottom. So you can see how easy it is with this serrated knife. I love these small knives. Now, I like to cook the piece of pork on a raised rack like this, because we're going to get lots of lovely fat. Some of this is going to render out during the cooking, and then you'll save that fat for roast vegetables or roast potatoes another day. Sprinkle a little salt and pepper onto this. Coarse sea salt, lots of very good Irish sea salt being produced now with some pepper. So very simple seasonings on the piece of pork to get it going. Into our preheated oven, and we'll roast that for about 40 minutes or so. And in the meantime, we'll get the seasoning ready. I'm using some fennel seed. This is a little fresh fennel here, the herb fennel. And when this goes to flour, it produces seeds. So I put those in there, grind them up. Pork and fennel is a fabulous combination. The next thing that goes in is some garlic. So 4 nice big fat cloves of garlic. And what I'm going to do is put a pinch of salt in with the garlic, sea salt again, and that will help the garlic to grip a little bit more and to grind to a paste. Some chili flakes, about 2 teaspoons. Now, just to say, if you overbuy red chilies and you don't think you're going to get to use them all, leave them on your kitchen counter or on the sideboard or the dresser or something, and they will eventually dry, and you can use them exactly the same way as the chili flakes. Just break up into little pieces. So essentially, what I have there now is the same as what is in there. Now, back to our paste. So pound the garlic. If you think the pestle and mortar is too prehistoric, you could put all those ingredients into your food processor and give them a quick whiz. But I like the mushy, paste-like texture rather than a pureed texture is what you get from your food processor. So I'm happy to do the little bit of pounding here and to end up with a paste which doesn't look so beautiful at this stage, but that's sort of what it's looking like now. And now I'm going to make a gratin of potatoes to serve with the pork. It's a combination of two of the most humble vegetables. Potatoes, which I have sliced and ready, and a suede turnip. Slice the turnip, and we've already sliced my potatoes here. We're going to blanch the turnips and the potatoes before we assemble the gratin. Slice turnips into some boiling salted water. That's just going to take the really hard, raw nature off the turnips. Once the sliced turnip has come to the boil, leave it to cook for just 4 to 5 minutes, and then remove the slices using a slotted spoon or a Chinese sieve like this. A brilliant piece of equipment. Use the same water for the potatoes and let them cook for a little less, say 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, these potatoes are ready, so a shorter time than the turnip. And strain them out. Now you're basically at this stage ready to assemble the gratin. So the turnips partially cooked and the potatoes partially cooked. Now, oven-proof dish that's been just lightly greased with a little bit of butter. So we start off by putting in some turnip and some potato. And then the herb I'm going to use here is thyme leaves. The smoky flavour of the thyme is brilliant with the flavour of the turnip, which could also be almost described as being smoky. On each layer, a good sprinkle of salt and pepper. So turnip, thyme, salt and pepper, potato, a little sprinkling of your cheese of choice. The sweetness of the Parmesan I really, really love with the turnip. A little cream. This could be chicken stock or vegetable stock for that matter. Okay, this can go in the oven. If you have a steamer function on your oven, this would be perfect for this particular gratin because it will create a lovely, gentle, literally steam-filled environment for it to cook in. Otherwise, just cook it in a water bath and it will create exactly the same effect. Now, let's see how our pork is doing. It is ready for us to put our spice mixture on. Clearly, it's not nearly cooked through or anything like that, but giving that first 40 minutes of cooking time means that the spice paste isn't going to get overcooked at the end. Just sort of push it in. You don't have a lot of paste because you don't need a lot, because the chili is hot, the fennel is strong, the garlic is clearly strong, and then this back into the oven and cook it for approximately another 40 minutes. Applesauce is the classic accompaniment for roast pork and has to be one of the easiest things to make. Peel the apples. I'm using Bramley or cooking apples for this, but you can use regular eating apples. The finished sauce will be slightly sweeter. Cut the apples into quarters and remove the core. Put them into a saucepan with a little sugar and a small amount of water and cook gently with the lid on. If the applesauce has been cooking for about 10 minutes, it's collapsed into a froth, which is the way I love it. Pork looks great. Lovely crisp crackling on top, but even to get it perhaps even a little crispier, what I like to do at this stage, I transfer it onto another tray, turn the oven temperature up a little bit, and put it back in for another 10 minutes to even get it more crispy and more bubbly on top. While that's happening, it's a really good time then to make your gravy. It's quite interesting now what we have in here. Pork fat, and then we've got the dark bits, they're the actual juices that came out of the pork, the meat juices rather than the fat. So I don't want the fat in my gravy, but I do want to save it for another day. And then you can use it for roasting vegetables and so on. It's really beautiful amber coloured fat. And when it's come from a lovely free range pig like this, it's just such good stuff. Put the tray onto the heat, and fat free is perfect for making the gravy. At this stage, if you want to thicken, you could put a little flour in now, and then make sure to cook the flour really well, and then continue on with the next step, which will be adding in the liquids, which is going to make most of the gravy. In my case, I have a little bit of chicken stock. So pour all of that in. So when you whisk, the little caramelized bits of pork juice are dissolved by the action of the whisk. Immediately, the gravy has darkened, so that's indication of intense flavor. Now, pinch of salt, some pepper. So at this stage, I like to decant the gravy from the roasting tray into a little saucepan, which is easy to handle. And also then, I usually sieve the liquid, because that gets out any scrappy little bits. You just get a more refined finish. So heat under that, bring it back up to a simmer, and then we'll see how it's tasting. Our gratin at this stage looks great. golden, sort of unctuous, really, really lovely. Our pork has been crisping further. There's a tiny little bit of juice stroke fat in this tray that was in the oven for a couple of minutes. You know what? I'm going to pour that over there just to give a little glaze. Our applesauce, if you make your applesauce hours ahead, which of course you can, I like to warm it up again before I'm going to serve it. It's better served warm stroke hot. Okay, so this is starting to become quite a nice little picture. So, back to my gravy. See if it needs any further seasoning or to see if I need to let it simmer for longer to reduce and concentrate the flavour. Now, it's really, really delicious. So, gravy. So just a little bit of garnish. I've got a few little sprigs of thyme left. That indicates to everybody there was a little bit of thyme in there. And because I have a little of the herb fennel, I'm going to put actually that entire bunch just at the end there. And it's a very appropriate garnish. So the roast pork, fennel, chili and garlic, lovely hot, bubbling hot gravy to go with it, applesauce, old-fashioned, fantastic, and a creamy, parmesan flavoured, thyme leaf flavoured gratin. This comes together to make a really lovely meal. Oeufs à la neige, snow eggs, floating islands, whatever you choose to call these delights, they're one of my favourite sweets. Extremely light meringues are poached in slightly sweetened cream until just set and then glazed with a thin, crisp caramel coating. Crème Anglaise is the most essential sauce to serve with them, hence the name Floating Islands, as the meringues float lightly in the golden pool of sauce. The first thing for the oeufs à la neige that you need to do is to get some milk on poaching, because the light meringue that we're going to whisk up in a moment, we're going to poach in milk. So in this saucepan here, a wide saucepan, you could use a wide frying pan as well, or even a wide roasting tray. I've got my milk, which I've sweetened lightly with sugar, and that's come up to a bare simmer. Have that ready before you start, because once the meringue is whisked, then you need to shape the eggs or the oeuf and get them in poaching straight away. So we're making a meringue here, but where with conventional meringue, generally speaking, you have double the amount of sugar to egg whites. With this, we're making a lighter meringue, so the proportion is almost in reverse. So some egg whites. Here we go. Let's get these beating. It's just sort of fluffing up very, very lightly. It hasn't, not sort of firming or holding its shape or anything at this stage. But this is the point at which I just sprinkle in the sugar. Can all go in one go. There's no need to add it in gradually. And now put it back onto whisk until it's good and firm so I can get a nice, smooth, lovely egg shape. Okay, let's have a look. I think we're there now. Yeah, see the way it's a lovely, firm meringue that's going to hold its shape. That's what I'm after. Now, your milk, which has been heating ahead of time, may get a little skin on it, and it's not the end of the world if that ends up on the oeuf, but it's nicer if it isn't there. I usually run a sieve or a whisk, like I'm doing here, across the top, and just gather up those little bits of skin. If the milk simmers or if it boils too hard, it's going to break up the relatively delicate little oeuf. To shape the oeuf, I usually dip my spoon into the milk just to warm it slightly, and then just sort of against the side of the bowl, make approximate sort of oeuf or quenelle shapes. And because they're so light, it floats. And keep going then until they're all in there. They're going to poach very gently with the milk only barely simmering, the odd bubble breaking around the side of the saucepan. We're going to poach these for about 3 or 4 minutes on this side. Okay, I think I'm ready to turn them over. So take a little palette knife or an egg slice and just sort of encourage them to flip over like that. Just sort of pressing and pushing and encouraging, if you like. So these have been poaching on the second side for about another 3 or 4 more minutes. Press them with your fingers, they just spring back towards you. Slightly sort of spongy. So then straight away, I'm using a slotted spoon or a perforated spoon, remove them from the milk and put them onto a tray lined with a towel, because the towel will soak up some of the moisture that's on the bottom of them, the milk in other words. The milk that you have left over, which is slightly sweetened, you could use that milk to make the flourless custard that we serve with these. So I'm going to let those cool for a couple of minutes and drain, most importantly, and then we'll transfer them onto the wire rack. The final element of this dish is the crème anglaise on which the Oeufs à la neige sit. Crème anglaise is a flourless, thin custard and flavoured with vanilla. It's a classic dessert sauce. Separate some eggs and add sugar to the yolks. Beat until thick and lighter in colour. This will take a couple of minutes. Add some milk. This milk has been infused with vanilla, and whisk all together. Transfer into a saucepan and keep the vanilla pod in there to get the maximum value from it. Heat the milk gently and stir constantly for about 15 minutes. Think about this task in a positive way and you can enjoy a zen moment. The custard mustn't boil, so keep a close eye on it. Once it holds the line when you run your finger over the back of a spoon, it's ready. Pour it through a sieve and quickly press it through into a clean, cool bowl. Cut the vanilla pod in half and scrape out the seeds and add these to the custard, giving it a stir to disperse them. The custard will thicken as it cools. So the Oeuf can be very simply served, a pool of crème anglaise, little Oeuf sitting on top, but I like to take it a little stage further and to introduce some caramel, because I find the bitterness of the caramel helps to prevent the overall effect being too sweet. And in this particular case, I'm making what's called a dry caramel. Just dry sugar, no liquids. Turn the heat on underneath it, and nothing's going to happen for a few minutes. So why am I making a dry caramel? Because it gives me a thinner crisp of caramel than one that I make with water. So this is when you need to keep stirring it. You've got the liquid caramel, and you're stirring it into the slightly cooler sugar. Eventually, it will all melt out, all come to the same temperature, and you'll have a beautiful chestnut-coloured sauce. Starting to caramelize there, getting darker around the edges and over here. So stirring it all together. And then usually at this stage as well, I'll encourage the lumps of sugar, which are slow about dissolving, I'll encourage them to break down by just making them into smaller pieces. It's happening quite quickly now, and we're pretty much the colour now that we want to be. Turn off the heat. That's chestnut for sure. Straight away. Pour over. Keeping your hand well out of the way. Last little bit of caramel. See the way the colour of the caramel changes even in the few seconds from the beginning of the pouring on to the end of the pouring on. That's how quickly it progresses. Then leave them. And within 10 minutes, that light coating of caramel will have set quite hard. So this is the fun bit. We're finally ready to serve. We have the Oeuf, the crème anglaise, and a little fruit to go with them. So you can do individual portions, and you need to be generous with the crème anglaise. The custard is a very important part of eating these. So we make a sort of a pond, and then all sorts of fruit any time of the year. I've got some raspberries here, which I've poached with a little sweet geranium. Rhubarb, gooseberries, strawberries, all of those things work really, really brilliantly. Lovely light Oeuf on top, and then straight to the table with that. Lovely poached meringue, caramel, lovely egg and vanilla flavoured custard. The whole effect when you're eating this, different textures, different flavours, lightness, crispness. It's kind of a joyful thing to eat. And for me, I find it a fairly joyful thing to cook.